Hello everyone, welcome to the Azure Learning Series. This is Lakshit Pant, your host for today. I'm from Azure Developer Community, and today we are going to talk about with our expert speaker. We are going to discuss about Microsoft Azure networking. So networking plays a major role in Azure when you say about routing, when you say about network security groups, and there are multiple services that Azure provides: VNet, subnets, in groups, outgress, ingress. So what are these things? Everything will be covered by our expert speaker Saurav Raghuvanshi, and he has been really doing great work, and he has been working with Microsoft. And now, I won't take much of your time. I'll quickly pass on the mic to Saurabh here so that he can just take up the session and enlighten you with his hands-on session.
Thank you, Lakshit. Can you confirm? Am I audible?
Yes, we are. You are audible.
Okay, thank you very much. So let me start by sharing my screen. Just a minute. Uh, I hope my screen is visible. Lakshit, can you once confirm if the screen is
Yes,
visible?
yes, yes, yes. It's visible, perfectly
Okay,
visible.
okay, thank you very much. Okay, so first of all, hi everyone. My name is Saurabh Vanshi, and I work at Microsoft. So before going to start the session, we will see like okay what all we are going to cover or what is the agenda of this session. So because networking is the core of everything that you work in cloud or in the normal IT environment. Also, you will see that networking is something that make you a real cloud engineer or be ready for the IT world because everything somehow cloud, IoT, AI, somewhere somehow it is related to networking. I will tell you like why it is networking is very important, and trust me when I say this, like whenever if you're a college student or you're looking for internship or job, whenever you are go into industry and looking for a job, networking is the one thing that is asked in a bulk. So I will just not talk about lot of like how this works, but we will talk about why it's very much important, and we will see that its importance in IT environment in cloud, and why it's like the Azure is quite leading when it comes to the Azure networking. Okay, so let's start with the session. Couple of time you will see that because I'm using two screens, so uh, like I will be seeing in a different screen than my camera, so just bear with me for that. Okay, so let's start with the session. So yeah, today we will talk about Azure networking more than its component. We will talk about its visualization, and when I'm say visualization, where it comes into the Azure environment and where it's come into the situation. Let's say you are working as IT administrator, network engineer, or a cloud engineer, how you will encounter Azure networking in your day-to-day life, and we will see more into the visualization part. Why I'm going to do it, this is the first time I'm going to try this method because I'm seeing a lot of people are looking for like a job or internship opportunity in cloud, and they miss this part because when you go and look for a job in this field, they will ask for whether do you have the visualization or not, how the virtual networks work, how the subnet or NSG or network security group, network interface card, where these all terms comes into the picture, whether you know whether these terms fit into the whole architecture. So it is very much important. So that's why I will go, and I will most of the time I will try to visualize my environment into uh, Lucid. Okay, this is the platform where you can make architecture diagram and you can create your environment on Azure. Before, like let's say anything that you want to create in Azure, in let's say enterprise or any company, first you create a architecture, you create a diagram like how these things are worked and how this will going to work. Once you have that complete ecosystem, then you will go and deploy this in any cloud provider. Okay, so that's how we will move ahead in this complete session. So let me go back to the PPT. So about me, so I'm quite active into the community. Before even joining Microsoft, I was Azure dev lead, and currently I'm also contributing as a dev lead only. I'm a 22 grades. It's been 1 year I'm working in Microsoft. I work in Azure PaaS team. Basically, I work in Azure API management as a service, Azure and other Azure developer services. I have done a couple of certification in Azure, including DevOps Engineer Expert. So this is about me. Today's checklist. So today we will talk about virtual network and how to manage the traffic into the networks. So that we will see in this lecture. So the first term that comes when you talk about virtual network is like when you talk about Azure networking is virtual network. So how you think, like how, if you have to visualize it, how you visualize the virtual network. So let's say you are living in the like earth, right? So think of it like a home of yours. Because why I'm saying this, so let's say Azure is something like a earth, something you can imagine, and your home, like that is virtual network, is something a part that you manage yourself, and you allow who will come in your home, who will go out from your home, and you will manage complete security, complete ecosystem. Okay, and something like you can keep like a guard. So like Microsoft will work as a guard for you. You will just tell that, okay, I want this particular service and I want use this, that, and everything will be set up and configured by Microsoft, and they will manage your security part. Okay, because we know that when it comes to the cloud, since start of the cloud journey, what one thing that people always fear about is whether my ecosystem is secure or not. And that's why every organization, including Microsoft, they invest billions of dollars into their security part. And when it's come to security, it's all about how you secure your network configuration, how you make your network resilient, that it will be highly available, it will be highly secure. So these are the very key terms that is very much important. Okay, so let's start with visualization, visualizing the virtual network first. Okay, so let me just go back to the diagram. Okay, so first let's say we want to create something like Azure. Where is Azure comes into the picture? So I will take this and we will try to create, okay, what's the Azure is. So let's imagine this is the complete Azure environment, including wherever the Azure is, including multiple countries and everything. Okay. So now you want to know, okay, this is Azure, but where is the thing that I can manage? Where is my independence that, okay, I can define my own security. I can define, okay, what will come into that, what will go outside. That's where your networking comes into the picture. Okay. So this is virtual network. So into the Azure, this will be your virtual network. This will be your environment where you will create something that you will define. Okay, how someone will come inside this, what will be the route for this, who will able to go outside from this environment, whether someone is allowed, even allowed to enter or not. Let's say you are organization, right? You want that, okay, in this, like whatever the resources will be there in this virtual network, it will be only accessible to our internal team. So what you will do, you will not allow any internet access to this virtual machine, or sorry, in this virtual network, because this way you will able to secure your environment inside the Azure only. It's more like you're a private environment into the Azure public cloud. So that's how you define virtual network. So inside the virtual network, since like this will be something like you would have heard about networking concepts like, okay, 10 dot something uh, in your college or the works that you are be doing. Okay, you must have heard. So this is works as a same way, like it's not very much a fancy thing. If you try to relate whatever you are learning in your college, you will able to relate to this. Okay, so this is your virtual network. Okay, so the next component that comes is, let's say I have a big virtual network, but I want to create a multiple isolated environment inside that. So how this will be possible? So inside the virtual network we can create multiple subnets. Okay, so let's say we will create a couple of subnets. Yeah. something like subnet 1. Okay, and we'll create one more subnet, something like subnet 2. Okay, so this will be one more layer of isolation inside your virtual network. Like how this will come into the picture. Let's say you have in your environment, there is some part that you want to have access to the internet, but there are some things that you don't want to have access to the internet. In how you will do this inside a virtual network, because there is will be one security group, let's say an SG, you are defining here, right? So let's say something, either you can block everything that will be coming into the environment, or you will allow everything to go outside from your environment. But you want that, okay, no, whatever is there in subnet 1, that will able to talk to my external world. But if there is something that is inside the subnet 2, that will not be allowed to talk to subnet to outside the internet. Okay, so let's say outside the Azure, this is the complete internet environment. Okay, so how you will do it? Like a common example, like you have like you use any website, right? You go on a website, you are able to access the website, um, like just by going on login dot, like whatever you do, like google.com, bing.com, you go to the website. But like that is because you are able to go, and that is in a public environment. But are you able to go and see in the databases? Because there the code or everything that will be there for that particular website, that will be there somewhere, right? But you will not able to access. So how these type of architecture are designed? This is designed in this way only. Like you create a virtual network, inside a virtual network you create multiple subnets. Some subnets will have the access to the internet, some subnet will have only access inside the virtual network. Okay, so let's say I have website. Okay, let me search for, let's say we have a app service in Azure. Okay, so what this does, so app service, and you have deployed, let's say, multiple app inside this app service. Okay, you want this app to be accessible by internet. Okay, let's say here, and we will write something like internet. So let's say this is the world of internet. Okay, you want that the app should be accessible to the internet, but this app will have some, let's say, user credential, like who all user will sign up into the app. They have these details, right? But these detail will, they don't want to have access to internet. So what they will do, they will keep their databases. Let's say I will search for database. Let's say everything is there in SQL database. So what they will do, they will put this like this. Okay, so like this app will have access to this SQL database. Let me put in other way. So let's say user, when the user will come, you will fetch for some data, let's say page or something, that will be come from the SQL database, but it will not be directly accessible to the internet. Only the subnet 1 will have access to the internet, but not the subnet 2. So how this is getting accessed? Let's say why subnet 1 is able to access internet, why subnet 2 is not able to access? You must have this question. So because like how you will do it, that subnet 1 have the access, subnet 2 don't have the access. So that we do with NSG. So okay, So what you will do, you will attach an NSG to your subnet one. Okay. In that NSG, you can define the rule. Okay, like this subnet will have access to the let's say whatever the port you want, or whatever the IP address you want. Let's say you want everyone should be able to access. So you will open 0.0.0.0/0. You can enter, right. So it will have complete access to the internet. But for this, you will keep the NSG. Maybe you want that NSG should be there, but in that you will not allow access to the internet. Rather than you will allow access to the, let's say, some other subnet, or some other VNet. Like there will be one more VNet, let's say. Okay, and you want that, okay, this SQL server will be accessible to that VNet also, but not to the internet. That type of configuration you will able to do here in Azure. And that is the flexibility that you can get inside the network, inside a virtual network also. So let's just revise the terms once again, so that we have a clear like a clear visualization of this. So first is, there will be Azure in a big picture. Okay, inside the Azure, that is a public cloud, right? You want to have something like a private ecosystem for you, where you manage the things who will come inside that and who will go outside. The common acronyms that you can use is, let's say, this is Earth, and Earth, inside the Earth there is your home. And because your home, you can manage the things who will come, who will go out. Okay, so that things will be possible inside the virtual network. Inside the virtual network, you can have a multiple requirement, right? Because now we are seeing a normal scenario, right? But in an enterprise environment, there will be multiple subnet, there will be multiple services, multiple ecosystem that will be required, and they all need to have a mesh configuration, that okay, this need to connect to B, but B don't need to connect to C, but A connect to C. Such type of configuration is possible. So how this type of flexibility you will able to get in the cloud? So that is possible through your net subnets. Subnets are like a sub part, like it's also called a subnet, right? A sub part of your virtual network. It is like isolation. Let's say if this has something like 10.0.0.0/8, this can be something like 10.1.0.0/16. This can be 10.2.0.0/16. So this type of configuration you can design and make your architecture more resilient, more secure, and more manageable. Because since now you understand, right? If you will open internet access to everything, this is not someone like Microsoft who will going to manage it for you, right? You have to define what you want to go outside, what you want things to come inside in your ecosystem. This you need to decide. So that's where, like, we can do the let's say Microsoft can do uh, platform level security, but what is there, how you want to use that platform, and how security and everything you want to design for that network, or your infrastructure, that you have to do. And that's where, like, a big company or like a lot of companies fail. And because of that, the security breach, data loss, these things happen. That's why the company invests a lot of resource to have a good cloud engineer, good network engineer, because everything depend upon them. Let's say you do everything right, but if there will be some data breach, anyone can just come into your environment, get your data, do something, sell the data, and completely got. If one time the trust of the customer is gone, then they will not come again, right? Because they will say, okay, I'm giving my data to them to keep it safe, and they are just putting it on the internet. How, why I will go and use? And this is the competitive environment, right? A lot of company will be doing the same thing. So whatever the company you will be part of, that company have to gain the trust of their customer, right? So that's where this cloud security comes into the picture, and that's where your networking need to be that resilient, that secure, that okay, anyone trustly say that okay, if I will be with them, I will be secure, right? So that will come with the how good architecture you have, and what's your past experience on networking. Okay, that's why these terms are very much important, and Azure networking is very much important. So this is something like okay, the common terminology I want to explain. And I would highly recommend, like, whenever you are trying to learn anything new into Azure or any cloud, go ahead and try to visualize it uh, in, let's say, this platform is free only, you can try this, or there is a lot of similar platform also, you can try any of them and try to visualize, try to design the architecture, because this is your day-to-day job. If you will become a cloud engineer, or cloud administrator, DevOps engineer, whatever the role you will get in cloud, or SRE, you will be doing day-to-day these things only. Okay, so I would highly recommend, go ahead and try to visualize the concept that you are learning. Okay, so let's come back to the PPT. Okay, so we talked about virtual network, we talked about subnets. We will see how to create virtual network in Azure. We'll see later. And that's where like a plan IP address, right? What I said, like when you create like a virtual network, it will ask to have a, what is the IP range you want, like something like a 10.0.0.0/8. And because you want to have a multiple sub system inside your virtual network, right? That is subnet. You want to design your environment in such a way that, okay, 10.1.1 something, it will be used for my virtual machine, something will be used by my databases. And let's say my virtual machine will have access to the internet, but my databases will not have access to the internet. So these IP planning is very much important. How you plan this and how you execute, it's very much important. Create public IP address. So whenever you create something inside Azure, right, that get associated, if you're not using virtual, it get associated with the public IP addresses. Okay, and and that address will have the access to the internet, or whatever the way you want to communicate with that service. Okay, you will have the access using that particular IP address. Okay, you can, let's say, in some scenario you want to have a multiple IP addresses, multiple because you want to use, let's say you have a website and that has DNS configuration and you want to have SSL certificates, and that will be used by different domains person. Okay, so you want to have a multiple IP address, so that, okay, let's say one IP address will be resolved by Contoso, one will be resolved by Microsoft. Okay, something like that you can design, so you can associate and deassociate your IP addresses. So if you see in this architecture also, how you plan your virtual network. So there will be, let's say, your on-prem environment, like, because if you will be working in some organization, it will not that, okay, their complete environment will be into cloud only. There can be a chance that some part of their cloud some part of their infrastructure will be in on-prem. So is it possible that, and they want to have a communication between your Azure virtual network and your on-prem ecosystem? And is it possible? So yeah, definitely it's possible, and it's very much important that this should be possible. Because let's say there is a lot of organization, let's say banking or finance, they want that, okay, their data, they want to keep it in their local on-prem environment, but they want that, okay, their application, let's say SBI is there, so their Yono application example, okay, that will be in cloud, so that they can get high availability, high resiliency, high durability, these type of concept they will able to get. But at the same time, they want that their data will be in their own ecosystem, their own data center. So how this will be able to achieve? So what will they do? They will create their app service or web app into Azure virtual network, and they will have their data or data center for their user credential or user information to their on-prem, and they can set it up with your virtual network, that, okay, they will able to get communicated. There is lot of way. Express route is there, site to site VPN is there, point to site VPN is there. There is lot of way you can achieve this type of ecosystem, and it's very much important to have this flexibility in a cloud. Because otherwise, how organization like these who has the compliance requirement will come and use the cloud? So this is very much important. So what is this is something like a logical representation. Virtual network is something like a logical representation of your own network, you can understand. And it is a dedicated private cloud only. What I said, like, let's say Azure is something like a earth, and your virtual network is something your home. So it is like a dedicated private cloud for you. That part you will manage, how to do it, how to manage that part. Okay, you can securely extend your data center with virtual network. That's what I said, like, you have on-prem environment, something that you want to keep on-prem, and something you want to bring into the cloud. You can have this connectivity, so that everything will be possible. Connecting to your on-prem to Azure, they will able to get flexibility of everything. Enable hybrid cloud scenarios. So there will be scenario that, okay, company not only want to access their on-prem, but they want to access to the multi-cloud also. So that flexibility is also possible using virtual networks. You can use virtual network to extend it to other cloud provider, to your on-prem, in a hybrid ecosystem. You can, because now we tell that, okay, people now started talking about multi-cloud, hybrid cloud ecosystem. Okay, so for this type of scenario, it's very much important that company allow to have the flexibility for the user. They can create on-prem multi-cloud or environment as well. So what is subnet? Like this I already talked. So let's say if you have something like 10.0.0/8, you can create multiple subnet. Let's say subnet 0, subnet 1, subnet 2. Okay, dedicated for, let's say, subnet 0 will be for my app service, subnet 1 will be for my databases, and you can divide your big virtual network address space into multiple smaller address spaces, and this will help you to manage every part separately. Okay, so virtual network can be segmented into multiple subnets. Okay, subnets will be a way to logically divide your network, and subnet basically help you increase your security, increase your performance, and make it easier to manage the network. And why we are saying this? Because we already explained, right? Why it will be secure? Because let's say your web app will able to access the internet, but your databases will not be accessible from the internet. This is possible only through subnets, correct? So you will able to get performance, resiliency, security using multiple subnets, and all the subnet address spaces need to be unique. Here you will see that 10.0.0.0/24. Here it is 1, here it's 2, it's 3. Okay, so it need to be a separate space, right? It not be like, okay, overlapping with each other. Otherwise, how it will know that, okay, which subnet is related to what? So it need to be unique. So let's go ahead into Azure portal and try to create a virtual network, and we'll talk about each component and we'll see how it come into the picture. So now I'm in Azure, in my Azure portal. Let's start with creating a resource group. Okay, so resource group is something like, okay, let's say you want to create multiple projects. So resource group is a isolation per project. Everything related to one project you can keep into one resource group. Okay, this is like something more of a logical isolation of your resources. So I have couple of resources. Okay, I will go ahead and create, let's say, resource group rg something. I can write vnet because I'm going to create vnet, so I will use something like that, and I will keep it into east us. Okay, you can give it a tag if you want. Tag will be like, okay, if you want to uh, create multiple resource group for each organization, you can isolate it using the tags. But for our purpose, for the demo, we are not going to do it. We are just going to go ahead and create this resource group. Okay, now the resource group is created. Let's go ahead and create a virtual network. And also, if you have any question, keep on posting it into the YouTube, your stream, okay, in the comment section. I will keep on looking into the questions and try to answer that. So let's go ahead and create a virtual network, okay? So here I will select the resource group. So the resource group like RGVNet that I just created, and I will give it a name, let's say VNet demo, okay? So while creating VNet, you get a lot of options. You can enable Bastion. Let's say if you want to have a virtual network, sorry, virtual machine. If you have to create a virtual machine inside this virtual network, and you want that, okay, that virtual machine will not directly talk to internet, but it use a secure way to talk to, let's say, log in or log into internet or use it. Okay, for that purpose you use Azure Bastion. So it is like a dedicated virtual network that you create for this purpose. But for our demo, we are not going to do it. You can enable firewall also. Let's say you want to create multiple rules to at this is also a part of security only. Like it trace the how the data is getting accessed or how the information is getting accessed into your ecosystem or in your in infrastructure, and you can manage it. Okay, DDoS protection, I hope you must know it. It's like protecting your environment from DDoS attack. It's like a distributed denial of services. Let's say what happens is this scenario is that some hacker will create a multiple users, and they will try to ping your website at the same time. Okay, and what it does is, because of lot of requests will be coming, your infrastructure will be okay, like millions of requests are coming in 1 second, so the legitimate user will not able to access your resources, let's say your website. Okay, so we see that sometime, okay, DDoS attack happened on this website and website was not available for the normal user, because all the resources are getting consumed by hacker. Okay, so you can enable this also in your virtual network. So what it does is it look for that particular pattern, okay, like where the request is coming, what all the IP address it is hitting, and based upon that it create a security rules, okay, to block that. So that type of security you will able to get from DDoS. The next thing that I want to show uh, is the IP addresses. Okay, what is the range of IP address we give? And so here you see the default it select is 10.0.0.0 10.0.0/25. Okay, this is a subnet that it created, and the virtual network range is 10.0.0.0/16. Okay, but I don't want to create it. I want to create my own space. Okay, so I will go ahead and delete this. Okay, I will create a new IP address space that will be IPv4. Okay, so it's like, let's say 192.168.0.0. Okay. Mm, okay, so I want to create this address space. Okay, I will go ahead and create it. So now I created a virtual network address space. Now I have to create subnets inside that, correct? So let's go ahead and create the subnet inside that. So the first subnet it will create is 192.168.0.0/24. So it's like, okay, these three spaces, this will be for the host, and the last one is for your particular address. Okay, so let's say create it. So it's create like one default subnet. I want to create multiple subnet. So you can also select, like if you want to create it for a particular requirement, you can select it for here also. Okay, but let's say give it a name differently. And now it's creating 192.68.1.0. Okay, so as I said, like all the IP addresses inside the subnet, it need to be different from other subnet. Okay, so let's go ahead and add it. Now I have two subnets inside this virtual network. Okay, this IP address, I have this for for my virtual network, and these all are two for my subnets. Let's go ahead and click on tags. You can do, if you want, you can add tags, but here it's not required. So I will go ahead and create the virtual network. If you have any question, you can post it in the chat. Uh, I will try to answer it. Okay. So for me, the virtual network is getting created. So now you will see that, okay, my virtual network is created. Okay. It has the address space of 196.168.0.0/16. Okay, and there is a lot of configuration you can able to do. We will talk about it one by one. First, let's start with address space. Okay, so it has 196.168.0.0. Okay, and if you see subnets, what is the subnet range? So it's 196.168.0.0/24, 196.168.1.0/24. So if you have to visualize it into here, what how you will visualize it? Okay, so let me bring a text here. Here, okay. So it is like 196.168.0.0/16. This is your virtual network here, okay? And you created two subnet inside that, okay? So the first subnet is 192.168.0.0/24. So like how it is different from the virtual network? If you see for my virtual network also, it's, let me put it here. So if you see for my virtual network, it is also 192.68.0.0, and it is also sorry, 196. So how it is different? It's different because if you see, it has a /16 and it has a /24. Okay, so it will start with something like, okay, 192.168.0.1, 192.168.0.2, something like that till 255. Okay, so this has this address space. Okay, this is how it's different from 192.168.0.0, because this will start from 192.168.1.2.3, everything it can do, but here it will 0 dot, then it will start with 1 2 3 4. Okay, so that is a different, like it has 8 8 8 and 8. Okay, so that's how cider is getting decided in virtual network. You can learn about it, like it's normal networking components. Okay, the how you do in, like you must have did it in your college. The other one that we created is 196.168.1.0/24. So this is how it's getting created, correct? Now you can see. So let's say in place of this, you wanted to create something like a virtual machine. That virtual machine will have a IES server, and it will and like you have a IES server, something like, and that you will install it on your VM, and that will have access to your let's say subnet 2 will have that SQL database. Okay, so let's go ahead and try to create this virtual machine also. Okay, so I will search for virtual machines. I will select the resource group, and this will be, let's say, VM subnet. Okay, and I will create Windows Server 2019 data center. This will be the image for my virtual machine. You can create a lot of different images. Let's say if you want to have a Ubuntu machine, or like Windows 10 Pro you want to create, or there will be a lot of images that is possible, and you can create virtual machine based upon that. For me, I will use the default one only. Okay, I will give a username so that I can able to log in. For the demo purpose, we will allow RDP for this virtual machine, but in most of industry use cases, you will not. You will use something like a Bastion, or like a isolated environment. You will not open your virtual machine port for RDP. But because this is a demo, so we can go ahead and use it. Here it is taking the disk. that is premium SSD. I hope like these topics are already covered, so I will not talk much about it. So it is selecting. If you see, my virtual machine is getting created inside a virtual network that I already created. That is VNet demo that I just recently created. And the subnet that is picking, I have two subnets, right? So this is default. This is subnet 2. Okay. So this is a subnet. Okay. And it will have a public IP that is VM subnet IP. It will allow the RDP access, and the rest you can keep it default. So my virtual machine is getting deployed. Okay. So now this virtual machine is going to be get created inside my virtual network. So it will not be completely open. It will be inside my isolated ecosystem that I created. Till it's getting deployed, let's see the other terminology. Okay, so we already see, okay, right, how to create virtual network. And planning IP address ranges, this is already we discussed how to, like, you can create some like a public IP address that will use to access internet. You can have a private IP address that will be, okay, let's say you want to have want a private connection between your on-prem and cloud ecosystem. Okay, so you don't want to have a public IP address for this. You want to have, okay, I want a secure environment from which my on-prem and my cloud is getting connected. So you will use express route, VPN gateway, something, okay, with your private IP address to communicate. Create public IP address. So like the way we are creating virtual machine, if you want, you can create IP public IP address also. It is like, okay, select IP address type, IPv4, IPv6. You can select the SKU, that is the basic and standard. You can select whether you want to have public IP that is dynamic or static. I will talk about what's the difference between dynamic and static. You can select zone redundant. So if you see associate public IP address, okay, you can associate the public IP address at a NIC level, okay. You can do at a load balancer, VPN gateway, application gateway. You can attach it, and you can have either dynamic IP address and static IP address. Static IP address, the IP for that will be same. It will not going to be changed. But for the dynamic, it will change. Let's say if you reboot the environment, it will going to be changed. So that is the difference between static and dynamic. Yeah. So Azure assign a new, so that will be your dynamic. But if you want to create a static IP address and want to save it, so that how this will be useful. Let's say if you have a DNS configuration, DNS setup, okay, and you want that, okay, this particular IP address will resolve to my website. But let's say if you want to reboot your website or make some changes into your website, the IP address will be lost. If you, it will be dynamic IP address, then you have to again make a create a record or C record into your DNS. But you don't want to have this type of hustle, right? So for that purpose, you can have something like a static IP address. There are multiple ways you can create virtual network. Like one I showed is developer, sorry, from portal. The second you can create with PowerShell. You can create with CLI, SDK. Okay. We talked about little bit about NSG also. So NSG is the way how you limit the traffic access. Let's say I said once you create subnet one, right? And that subnet want to have access to the internet. So how you will define that? So there will be rules, right? that will be inbound rule, that have a outbound rule. So you can decide, okay, what you want, from which IP address you want that the traffic should come inside, from which IP address you want that the traffic should go outside. That you can decide, okay. And you can associate this subnet, sorry, network security group at a subnet level. So if you see the diagram, I attached it at a, if you go here, I attach it at the subnet one, okay, because I want that, okay, this has a rule to access to internet, okay. So you can decide, okay, where you want to attach it. So on subnet 1, subnet 2, what all the rules it has, whether it has access to talk to other virtual network or internet, even if from the internet, from which IP address you want to allow, which port you want to allow, everything you can able to configure from here. So this is all the rules, right? So priority, the least the number is for the priority, it will get the highest priority, okay. So everything by default will be deny. So deny all, okay, it will be created, because how the security Microsoft approaches, like we will deny everything. Whatever you want to allow, you can just add it. This way, like, you don't have to think, okay, what all the negative scenario that can happen. You can just add a positive scenario. Let's say, okay, I want access from this subnet, or I want to access from this IP address, that you can decide, okay, and add it. But by default, everything will be deny. So deny by default is a security that any cloud enterprise or big enterprise, whosoever you will encounter, they follow this, okay. So basically, security rule in NSG enable you to filter network traffics that can flow in and out of your virtual network, subnet, and network interfaces. Okay, and this is by deny by default, right? This rule will not be disassociated. Okay, it is by default. It's created, so you can't delete it. So let's say there will be scenario that, let's say if you have multiple subnets, okay, and multiple like VNet 1, VNet 2, and the traffic should go from multiple NSGs, okay. So it will use effective route to tell that, okay, whether this particular request will pass to the internet, or let's say to your service, or it will not. So it use the effective rule in this scenario. Let's say if there is NSG1, NSG2, so let's say if there is something deny, so it will the highest priority will come into the picture. And how you add NSG, like you can just create NSG, okay, and you can add it to your subnet. You can, in the rules, you can set, okay, what priority it has, which port you want to open, so that you can decide. Let's see whether the virtual machine got created or not. So it's got created. Okay. Okay, so this is the virtual machine. If you see it, it has a public IP address. But if you want to see, okay, how the securely then it will connect. Okay, so if you go on networking, it will you will see that it has a network interface, and network interface has a private IP. Okay, that will be 196.168.0.4. It use this, okay, this NIC private IP to communicate, and you will see it has a default inbound rules, right? Inbound rule and the outbound rule. This is what I was talking about. So it get created for you. You can have like a application security group also. You can create load balancer also to and attach it based upon your requirement. Here you can add, let's say if you want to add something, some port, let's say if you want to allow everything, okay. So it will be star, destiny will be let's say if you want to allow particular service tag, let's say you want to allow for virtual network, that okay, anything that will come, it can communicate to my virtual network. You can set it up, and at what port you want to open it. It's like 8080, or like you can 443 3443, whatever you want to decide, you can put it. You can keep the priority. Let's say if you want that, okay, this definitely should resolve, so you keep it at the highest priority. So the lowest the number will be, the highest priority it will get. So you can decide it and you can just add it, so it will add a inbound rule. Okay. So what is policies? Okay, this is not very much related to security, sorry, in terms of networking, but it is very much important for the security perspective. So policies, let's say something you want that, okay, in my Azure environment, I want that all the resources should be created in East US, or let's say Central India. You don't want like, okay, your data should be go outside India data center. There's a lot of requirement, right? There can be some compliance requirement that data should be in house or like in region only. So how you will design that? Okay, some developer or someone who don't know, or someone who joined your company recently, they may create, right? If they don't know or they haven't listened it, they can create. So how you by default like deny it? So what you can do, you can create policy for this, and you can assign the policy at your subscription level or your management and management level. What it does, it by default it will say that, okay, all the resources should be created inside the East US. So it will only allow, let's say Central India, so it will only allow resource to be created inside the Central India. If you select any other region apart from Central India, it will say that no, you don't have the permission, or by default it's not allowed. You may have to reach out to your admin. Okay. So this way you can create a more secure environment for you. Whatever the compliance or security requirement you have, you can put it into the policy and assign it at your subscription level or resource group level or your management level, and it will keep provide you a secure environment. Definitely in networking, when we talk, there is a lot of conceptual terms. Maybe definitely it will sound like a lot of words, a lot of new terms, but uh, definitely you need to understand this, because this is how any infrastructure is built into any of the cloud provider. So you have to understand this, and definitely networking is something that is always the toughest part of cloud. For me also, it's something that very interesting. At the same time you need to understand a lot of things, because one small mistakes can create a security breach in your environment. So that's why it's very much important to understand these terms. So other thing can be firewall. Like we already talked about, firewall is basically, let's say you want to create some rules based upon that. It has some threat intelligence method. Like, okay, if this will be some way the data will be coming, block it. Don't allow it to enter your environment. Okay. Or you want to, okay, some particular IP address should not come, you can block it. And you can have something like a dashboard where you can monitor these things. So it is like the way you use firewall in on-prem. Azure firewall is something that is similar to that, that is available on Azure. DNS is something that, let's say, you knew, like whenever you come into Azure, you create any resource, it get created on like on Microsoft.com, something default domain name. Okay. Let's say a website you created, so website will have on Microsoft.com, something like that as a domain name. But you want that, okay, no, I don't want that it has a Microsoft.com in my name. I want it has something like, let's say my own company, Saurav Raghuvanshi portfolio, something like that, portfolio.com or portfolio.org. So that's where the custom your DNS comes into the picture. You can create your own DNS, and you can add it. Your you can create your own domain and add it. Okay. And you can create your own a name, c name record, how it will resolve. You can add it. It's like, okay, because you see, right, the websites, everything, it will somewhere hosted into some of the cloud, but you don't get their name into when you try to browse that, because they use their own domain to browse. So these are the steps you can follow. I will give this PPT to Lakshya so that he can share with you guys also. You can just see like how to create the DNS. You can just go ahead and create it. Because of the time limitation, I'm not creating each of the resources, because these takes times. Like if you create, it will take 20 minutes, 15 minutes to get it deployed completely. Then you can add like a delegation DNS, like how the resolution will happen in your region or your for your DNS that you can design. You can add record, that can be a name, that can be c name. It is a pure networking concepts that you would have studied in your college, or if you are new into your college, you will study in near future. So how you manage your traffic, okay? That's where the route come into the picture. So you want that, okay, if something will come from this IP address, the next thing that it will do, it will go to this particular IP address. Let's say subnet 1 on subnet 2, okay? And you want to have a route between them, so you can design some route table that, okay, the request will come from this resource or this IP address, it go to this backend or this subnet, okay? That you can decide. It will be a route table, like every time the resource will come, it will check at the route table that, okay, what is the route, what is the next hop I have to go, and whatever is designed there, it will go to the next hop based upon that. So here you can see like the how the route table is getting created. So you can create a route table, enter the name, you can enter the resource group, you can give the location, and you can select, okay, where is the next hop. So you can see next hop type, you can select it as a virtual network, or you can select it like a virtual appliance, okay? You can select anything and you can add like address for that. So load balancer, it is a very important service when it's come to make your environment highly available. So how this comes into the picture, okay? So let's say you have something like a website, okay? And that website need to be highly available. So you don't want to create it in one virtual machine, because let's say if that virtual machine have some downtime, or let's say that virtual machine went for upgrade. So at the time the virtual machine is going to be upgraded, at that particular time you don't have access to your website because the complete infrastructure is down. But you don't want to do it, right? You want to have like a very highly available environment. So what you can do, you can create like a multiple virtual machine, and all the requests who will come into your environment, that will go through uh, your load balancer. And let's say if particular virtual machine is down, so what load balancer do is every second it used to check, okay, health probe, whether that like my backend services is available or not. That can be a virtual machine. So if you see that, okay, that virtual machine is on upgrade, so all the requests that will come into your environment, it will not transfer that in that particular virtual machine. Instead it will transfer to the other available virtual machine, okay? By this way you can achieve high availability in your environment. So let's see how this comes into the architecture point of view, okay? So let's say this is the environment, right? So I have to create another environment for this. So let's say if you have multiple virtual machines, okay? uh, I'm keeping this aside, I'm creating it here, okay? Okay, so let's say you want to create a website for your company, or let's say web app for your company, and that you want that will be hosted on IES. But your administrator or your company managers, whoever on the top, they want that, okay, make sure that this website never went down. So if you, let's say, only install your website into this, okay, let me, and user will come, okay, let's say users. And let's say if there is only one website is there in only one VM, just remove it, okay? So, and your IES web server is there, okay? In this you have IES web server. IES is like a website, okay? On top of which you can create a website. So okay, so now every time someone is trying to access website, okay, what will happen, that user will go to this VM, okay, and where your backend service will be, okay, and it will access the resources from there. And let's say in some situation this virtual machine is not available, let's say it's went for upgrade and it's down. So now when the user will try to access this, he will not get any response back. there will be no response for this. Okay, it will say that, oh, no access. Okay, let's say access got cancelled here, something. Okay, because the backend is not available. But now your administrator says that, oh, my website is down and my users are getting affected. Being you as an administrator, can you make this website highly available or resilient, so that in case even there is some upgrade going on or something down, it don't went down. Okay, and my user will able to access my website. So how you can do it? So how you think in terms of visualization? So because if it will be in one VM, definitely it will someday it will go down, right? So you want to create it in a multiple environment. So I will go ahead, I will create one more VM, but there is a problem. Let's say there is no problem, like there is no downtime now. Okay, so now how this user will know, okay, I have to go to this VM or this VM, because this will have a different IP address, this will have a different IP address, right? So it will not know like, okay, I have to go to this website or I have to go to this website, because they content is same, but they are deployed in a two different VMs. Okay, so they have two different IP address. So how the user is getting confused. Okay, I have a big problem. Now your administrator come again and say that, okay, what you are building, man, my user is not able to go anywhere into the environment. Can you just make it something that, okay, my user will able to access everything? So you said, okay, definitely you can do it. So what you will do, you will search for load balancer. Okay, so every time user will have to access, it will access the load balancer IP address, and load balancer has a backend rule. Okay, something like this. Okay, so now every time user will access to this IP address of the load balancer, but at the back end there will be two VMs. So there will be, if you see here, there will be backend pool. So these two VMs are there in in the load balancer backend pool. Okay, and you will decide the rules. Okay, let's say some VM is down, you will route to VM2, VM1, or let's say divide the traffic equally. Let's say if two user will come, one will go there, one will go there. Okay, this type of rules that you can decide. Let's say there is scenario now, if this VM is down, let's say if because of any problem or upgrade, this VM is down. Okay, let's say this VM is down, but still your user, will be happy, because the traffic will come to this load balancer, and if this VM will be down, this load balancer will route the traffic to this backend pool, and you will be happy that, okay, I am always getting my service accessed. Let's say other user also come, and it will also be going to be routed, and he will also be going to be routed to the same VM. Okay, and like the user will be happy. And now you design the resilient architecture. Your admin is also happy. I'm looking for some good happy image of admin. Let's say something like this. He will be happy with you because you designed the architecture. Because of that, now even if the website is, even one particular VM is down, still the user is able to access the environment, right? So your admin will be happy. Oh wow, uh, Saurav, you design architecture, now my user, even in the worst situation also, I'm able to access my website. So he will be happy with you, and maybe you get a promotion also with that. Okay. So this is how you make your architecture highly available, more resilient. Okay. Yeah, you can see, right? This is the front end. There will be your load balancer, and this will be your backend pool: VM1, VM2, VM3. Okay. In case of, let's say, any of the VM is down, still your request is going to be processed. So this is it's showing how to create load balancer. Okay, you can just, it's the same process for each resource. It's just you need to understand when to use which particular service. So instead of creating that particular service, I'm trying to explain like how you use it, because you can just follow on any YouTube or any video or even Microsoft Doc. You can just search for, let's say, uh, uh, create a virtual machine, or sorry, create a load balancer. If you go, it will show you step by step approach. But just going through the step and creating it, it not make more value, or it will not add lot of sense to you until unless you will understand why to use this, when to use this, when this will come into the picture. So by following just the steps, you will see, you will able to create the virtual network. Okay, or your load balancer, and you can just go ahead and create multiple VMs, add the resources. Okay. But you need to understand visually like how these terms comes into the picture, when to use which particular term. Okay, because creating the resources, because it's a lot of simple UI, you just go ahead and able to create it, but the toughest part is to understand when to create it. Okay, so just focus on that part and try to understand these terms, when this will be useful and when to use what. Okay. Okay, so most of the part we covered already. Sorry, I just don't want to like bombard with lot of terms, so I try to keep it more simpler. But let's go ahead and see something on the portal also to understand the concepts. So we see that, okay, we created the virtual machine, right? Let's go back to our VNet and see the different things that is available. Okay, so this is the subnet like address space that I told about. This is what you give. This will be the your environment. Okay, subnet will be your isolation inside your virtual networks. You can create something like DDoS protection. You can just go ahead and enable it, and it will provide extra security for your environment for DDoS attack or these type of problems. By default, there is a basic plan of DDoS available for each of the Azure service that is free of cost. So even if you don't enable, there will be a DDoS that is there for you. You can create firewall here for this virtual network. You can just click and add a firewall, and you can just go ahead with this step and create the firewall. Very simple. Okay, here you can add your DNS, what I told. Let's say if you have organization, something like you have purchased the DNS for sort of cloud blog, something like that. Okay, if I will have something like this, okay, I have to add the IP address here. So like every domain has a IP address. So you will add, like, let's say for my have something like 192.0 something .0.0/32. Okay, and you can have multiple IP address you can add. Okay, and you can create it, your DNS, okay? But for me, it's not getting because this is not a valid one. So if you have that, you can add it. Let's say some company like Bing.com. So it has some IP address, right? But whenever you browse to Bing.com, not to something that is hosted on Azure. What is peering? So peering comes into the picture when you have, let's say, multiple virtual networks, okay? And you want to have a communication between them without going on the internet, okay? So how you will do it? So let's see this into the diagram. So let's say you have this virtual network and this has a VM, right? And and you want to have a communication with some other virtual network. Let's say we will create one other virtual network. Now you have one more virtual network, okay? And there is, let's say, a database. Let's say not SQL database, but something like Cosmos that is known as. Let's first create a virtual network subnet in that. So let's say there is subnet inside your virtual network, and you can create, let's say, Cosmos DB is there. This is a non-structured database, okay? And you want to this virtual machine to connect to this Cosmos DB. So how the normal approach will be? This will go to internet, and then it will go to this virtual network. It will talk to this, get the response bank, and then give to the VM. Do you think it is a secure way? Definitely not, because your Cosmos database is getting access from the internet, okay? This you don't want. You want that, is there any way this virtual network talk to each other without going onto the internet directly? So yes, there is the way. You can create peering. This will be bidirectional, but for here we are showing just one direction, so understand that, okay? This is VNet peering. So now this VM, without going onto an internet, can talk to this Cosmos DB, get the result, share on the internet, but this database will not be accessible to the internet. So this type of complex environment you will be seeing in your organization or whosoever. Even in the interview, these type of questions get asked. Okay, I have a virtual network one, virtual network two. How this can be communicated with each other without going onto internet? You can get questions something like, let's say there is some virtual network and I have an on-prem environment, that is some data is there in my on-prem environment. How I can communicate uh, between my Azure virtual network and my on-prem without going onto the internet? So there are a lot of way you can have, like if you want a dedicated system where everything travel on a Microsoft backbone network without going onto the internet. It's a very fast, very secure, very resilient environment. You can have something like express route. You can have something like a site-to-site VPN. You can have something like a point-to-site VPN. Okay. With this, there is a lot of different approach you can follow. So definitely it need to be learned more in depth. But the basic concept, if you have something like this type of visualization, and if you will able to visualize the environment, yeah, definitely it's not a one day thing. Not it's like, okay, today you will learn, next day you will go ahead and try to do it, it will work, definitely not. But yeah, definitely it will help you understand uh, how the complete environment work. Let's say if you talk about any big company, how their backend infrastructure is hosted. So let's say I will search something like this is just one part of their application. Like the supplier will come, it go to like their e-commerce website. There will be some APIs that contain a service. It will talk to Cosmos DB, and this type of architecture you can create completely. So whenever you go and work in the organization, first thing is not you go ahead and deploy something into the cloud. First, they will ask you, okay, can you explain me how this application is going to work in the cloud? Something like this. Can you create something, some visualization, some diagram where you can explain me how the complete flow will be for my application and how it will be flown? Okay, so this need to be created, this need to be visualized by you being a cloud engineer or cloud administrator. You need to have this visualization that okay, how if the user will come, where, what is the next step it will go, what is the next hop for this, and how all the services, all the component will communicate with each other. You need to have this type of visualization to work in a cloud based environment or a network based environment, even in on-prem environment. If you want, if you will become network engineer or network, if you go into networking team, these things, this visualization is very important. Not only networking, in DevOps, in whatever role you will think, visualization is very much important. That's why in today's lecture I wanted to try this approach to share in a more of a architecture way, so that you can go ahead and try to explore more of this opportunity and bring up some, come up with some diagram. Let's say okay, uh, I want to build something like a web app, and this is the architecture that I build. Do share with me on LinkedIn. You can ping me on LinkedIn, or you can just post on LinkedIn saying that okay, something that you learned today. Maybe you can take this architecture diagram or create your own architecture diagram and post it on LinkedIn. Share. This will help recruiters who will be looking for potential people who are good into cloud. They will understand that okay, you are a person who know the basics of cloud, who has the visualization, very important, who understand the architecture, is available in the job market to get a new job, and you will be the fit for that role, and that will bring him a confidence that okay, let me try this candidate, let me get that person interviewed in my organization. Try to build something like this type of things, share it on LinkedIn, or maybe just whatever you learned today, do share it on LinkedIn. Talk about it. Okay, you learn something this, and how you are going to approach it in the future. Share it. Definitely it will bring a lot of attention from the lot of good hiring people, the one organization who are still hiring in this tough situation in IT. Definitely it will provide you a edge over other candidate, and definitely it will help you get your next job or your first job or first internship. So this is it from my side. If you have anything, you can ping it in the chat. How the number of VM depend upon users? No, like the user will not depend upon the VMs, but it will depend upon, let's say, just let me go back to the architecture. Okay, like if you want to have high available environment, there should be at least two VM should be there. Let's say if one VM is down, other VM will be there to resolve the user request, right? But let's say there are 1,000 or 10,000, 50,000 per second user is coming, and in that scenario, let's say VM is down, then this VM is also not able to help you, because it will reach 100% of utilization of their CPU and RAM utilization. So it will start, your request, user request start failing, right? So that's why there need to have a backup resources there in your environment. So let's say if you have two VMs, and these VM are like at max it's reaching like 50% of utilization. So let's say if some situation one VM is down, still because it's going to reach approx 100% or 90%, still all your user request is going to be resolved. But still it's good to have multiple VMs, so that your architecture will be highly available as well. Let's say since one VM is down, it doesn't mean that all the requests will be coming onto one VM only. Let's say now this VM is down, so there is no request that is going on this VM. All requests are coming on this VM only. And let's say now the resource utilization is keep on going to be increased for this user, right? So you want to have backup solutions. So let's say if this VM is reaching like 70-80%, create one more VM that is like a skill set type of things, okay, and attach it to this load balancer. So you can create this with the automation script, okay. So that is totally possible. Any other question if you have, or anything, any question that you want to share, you can ping into the chat. Else, there is nothing further from my side. If you have any question, anything, even after the session, you can ping me on LinkedIn. Also, if you like the session, do share it on LinkedIn. Whatever you learned, it will definitely help to catch a lot of people eyes that okay, you are spending your weekend to learn something new, to invest time in learning. That will definitely help you in long term. So yeah, with this, thank you everyone. Thank you for your time and joining the session. I hope you learn something good, and we will meet soon. Thank you.